Let me just record a little bit to kind of establish. If you could just say something, so then I can guarantee you sound all right.
Something so that you can guarantee I sound all right.
Oh, we got a comedian here. Hello and welcome to Too Many Movies, the podcast where we discuss DVDs, Blu-rays, and even the occasional VHS tape. I'm your host, Hal, and with me here today, Ketchup. Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Ketchup. I am a simple fellow on Letterboxd who, believe it or not, reviews movies. Crazy.
Imagine that, reviewing movies on Letterboxd. Who does that? Oh, well, Ketchup, welcome. We got a couple of movies today. A couple of movies that William kind of described as normal. Before we get into it, I was talking with William, William asked at one point, he was just like, "Hey, who's got an hour and 8 minutes to spare?" Because he wanted to show us some weird movie, and I said, "I can't. I'm watching a movie for the podcast." It was just The Breakfast Club, and he's just like, "Oh, Breakfast Club. That's so normal." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Is this the most normal episode you've had in a while?" And I'm like, "Huh. I guess it is." So today's a very normal episode, Ketchup. So thank you for recommending these very normal movies. I
It'll be a
guess.
very chill and laid back kind of episode.
Yeah, very normal episode. No surprises, no weird movies being talked about here. Hey, speaking of weird movies, the first movie we're talking about today, that would be La La Land. You recommended this because I happen to have it on Blu-ray. So Ketchup, why don't you start things off? What did you think of La La Land?
Well, La La Land to me is like the crowning achievement of Damien Chazelle. His
Mm,
It is his magnum opus, if you will.
interesting.
Just an immaculate sort of homage to like golden age musicals, because that's something that he himself was really big into in his youthful years.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just this absolutely beautiful love story between these two people. That's really a very real love story, even actually. I think that's what really helps make it so strong for me. That it feels like me and Sebastian are just like two regular everyday people that just happen to come across each other and really kick it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what? I am still very much a Whiplash fanboy, but I mean, I still really like this movie. I think it's very good. Uh, in terms of like Chazelle's filmography, I would definitely put this as my second favorite. I have not seen Babylon yet, as of recording this. I have seen
I
First
have.
Man. Oh, you know what? Before we get into First Man, please, anything to say about Babylon? You know what? Actually, before that, I was going to watch Babylon because I was like, it's out of theaters. It's probably easily accessible now. I'll actually have an opportunity to watch it. And then I didn't watch it. I was too busy watching Underdog last night. So, uh,
I rented it out through Redbox. I was very interested in seeing what this movie is about, mostly because the critical reception was very, you either love it or you hate it.
mhm.
And I really loved watching Whiplash and La La Land because I watched it for the first time around when Babylon came out.
Okay, cool.
Uh, wasn't quite my cup of tea. I think like the best way to describe it is like, what if Damien Chazelle did his own version of Baz Luhrmann's The Great Gatsby?
Oh. Uh-oh.
Which, for like the people who know of Baz Luhrmann's The Great Gatsby, hearing that, it's like, that's a scary description, but I mean, it's I don't know how else to put it. It's like there's a there's so much weird stuff going on. It's just
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
It's everything and nothing at the same time.
Oh, Baz.
Just like a Baz movie.
Oh, classic. No. Yeah, no. So that's what I've heard from people, is that Damien Chazelle's kind of in a weird spot now with Babylon and First Man. Like, when I've watched First Man, I'm like, did Damien Chazelle direct this? This feels very weird for a Chazelle movie. I guess because we're so used to him being this, like, musical movie kind of guy, because we got La La Land and Whiplash before, which honestly, I mean, we could go on about his other movies, but I think we should stick to La La Land, because it's just so
I do
amazing.
think, like, at least with Whiplash, there is a little bit that could be connected here, since
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
La La Land was like the first big screenplay that he pitched, but the producers were not entirely on board with it, just because they felt it was a little too ambitious for a new coming director. As such, Damien Chazelle brought out Whiplash, and he created the short film that was like this one of the scenes from the movie that had like young Neil from Scott Pilgrim in it, and producers really liked that.
Okay.
And so they gave him a chance with Whiplash, which, I mean, it became a big financial and critical success. Which gave them like the motivation to go forth and allow Chazelle to do La La Land.
Yeah. I will say, again, like I said earlier, I'm more of a Whiplash fan, but I absolutely see where people like you are coming from, where they love La La Land the most. Because I agree, like, the things that people love about La La Land, I love too. I think it's a very fun, very bouncy, very energetic movie. I think it has a lot of really entertaining musical numbers. I'm very mixed when it comes to musicals. Like, I've kind of seen myself as more of a fan of animated musicals more so than live action musicals, but I think this movie does the musical very well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think animation has like this really powerful way of making things that normally we look at as being very weird feel 100% natural.
Yes.
So whenever it's being done in live action, you're always half thinking, why exactly are they singing? While in comparison, you're watching like The Lion King, and you're not questioning why the lions are all singing about how much they want to be king.
Yes.
Because it's like, lions can't normally talk. So why is it all too different that they're singing right now?
Right. Yeah. There's that suspension of disbelief. You definitely have. Yeah, let's talk about that opening number for La La Land, which I feel like really establishes what this movie is about. And it's interesting because neither of the main characters are involved with the opening number until, like, it pans down into Ryan Gosling's car, which I think is very interesting for an opening number, because like you'd think it would, like, you'd want to establish your characters in the opening number, but it doesn't really do that. But it kind of does.
Instead, it's actually establishing like the thematic idea that this movie explores, with the whole moving up and getting big inside of this dreamscape world of success.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's just it's also, it's like the camera work is very excellent. I love the way it feels like a one shot. I doubt it was all filmed in one take. Like, it definitely is simulated to look like a one shot, but like, I still appreciate that because it gives this like kind of energetic flow to the camera work and the scene itself. It's also just a very catchy song too.
I can't quite remember how many days they spent filming it. I feel like they only spent a singular day, because they had to close down an entire, like, a real freeway.
Yeah.
There's a review on Letterboxd that's very negative about this movie, where the users like, I was there when they closed out the freeway. It made it so that I was late, like an hour late home from work that day. This movie is terrible because it always reminds me of that moment.
That's so funny. That reminds me of the story my good buddy John, who's been on the podcast before, he told me about the filming of the movie Black Dog, how like they shut down a highway, or they shut down some stretch of road to like film something, and like as they like, you know, open the road back up and people were passing by, they were like giving dirty looks to the filmmakers and flipping them the bird. Which is really funny to think about. Oh, but you know what? I mean, I'm amazed they actually did shut down an LA freeway. I mean, I can't imagine LA freeways are, you know, working normally anyway where there wouldn't be traffic, but like, that's amazing actually that they still were able to pull that off. And also like do all that dancing in like that LA heat. Like here, this is something interesting about the movie. It's a very clean looking movie, but like, my God, like, just dancing out on that freeway under that LA sun must not have been that fun. You know, it's just
absolutely not.
yeah,
It
it's
must hurt.
yeah. But let's get into that. So the movie very much has a very sterile feeling to it, where it feels very clean, very kind of fake and plastic looking, I feel like, which I know for a fact is intentional, because, you know, it's a movie about glorifying, you know, this like Hollywood aesthetic, you know, like these characters are living in this fantasy essentially. You know, that's why the movie's called La La Land. Like it's a fantasy world, you know. So of course it's going to be
a
a little
dreamscape that
yes,
reflect like the idealized version of this place.
exactly,
You know? The
yes.
LA that doesn't have people throwing spears into other people's car windows.
The LA where Seth Rogen gets his car broken into and he's just like, oh well.
I've had my car broken into 17 times, and you know, sometimes they leave a little pocket knife as a little gift.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Obviously, I can imagine like a lot of, I mean, you were saying that like there's a negative review for this movie about that person like being late to work. I have seen negative reviews for this movie where they're just like, oh, it just glorifies Hollywood. It's just like, yeah, that's kind of the
And then
point.
also, like, sometimes you just get like a really weird one, like Sally Jane. She made a review that she later deleted where she was like criticizing the film for having Ryan Gosling explain the history of jazz in a nutshell, which is everybody dogpiled on her because it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
It's just music.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Oh, classic Sally Jane.
I think we brought that up like several months back.
We've definitely talked about her in the server just because I love bringing up her Oliver and Company review where she's talking about Oliver and Company, this dumb, stupid Disney movie from the 80s, and she prefaces it with trigger warning mentioning of white nationalism, and she basically goes on a rant of how much she hates Billy Joel, and the only reason
the only thing she criticizes the movie for as well. It's like there are things to criticize the movie for. I'm not a big Oliver and Company fan, but like Billy Joel is your only argument. What?
It's not even a criticism against the movie. It's a criticism against Billy Joel and saying like he's only popular because of white nationalism. It's like, what are you talking about?
That has nothing to do with the movie.
Oh, yeah, but see, like, but that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of weird criticisms for this movie, which, again, I get it. If Hollywood glorification is not your thing, you're not going to get into this movie, which I'm kind of half and half on that. I don't really.
I think another part as well is like if you look at Letterboxd, it is actually like one of the most popular movies that's been logged on the site.
Mm-hmm.
And if we remember, like I think we talked about months ago, back when Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was big, there were a lot of like 1 out of 10 reviews that are like, I haven't seen the movie, but there's no way this film is as good or better than Lawrence of Arabia. And I think a lot of those kinds of criticisms are people just making up reasons to hate the film for a similar reason. Either that or they just don't like musicals, which is fair argument.
Sure. If this is not your cup of tea, I totally get it. But, you know, I'm not going to criticize the movie for fake reasons. I'm going to criticize the movie for things I actually don't like about it, which, you know, like, I mean, I do like what this movie is setting up. I like the idea of Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling kind of being two sides of the same coin where they just want to, you know, create stuff. They want to create art and, they want to do that in Hollywood, be in this like glitzy glamoury world of show business. I totally get that. And I like little details throughout the movie, like when Emma Stone is auditioning for a role at the beginning, and then she doesn't get it, and she like exits the auditioning place. She gets on an elevator with other redheaded actresses who also look disappointed. It's just like, oh, that's kind of a neat detail.
Or just like how the entirety of the ending is, it just mirrors back to like the first times that they see each other again inside the club.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's there's a lot of little details to this movie that I appreciate, and I just can't really say this is a bad film when it does these little details and actually has these really cool aspects. I will say, like, there are things that kind of bug me, which I guess I can get into, and some things that kind of bug me. I think my biggest criticism has to be with Ryan Gosling's character. Now, I will admit, Ryan Gosling himself is an amazing actor. Like, holy shit, he does such a good job at, like, if he wasn't in the role, I would think Sebastian's kind of a piece of shit. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, he sells the character very well.
It's a cliche thing to say at this point, but Ryan Gosling is sort of like, I think he's like another step above Chris Pratt and being like he's just like me for real kind of actor.
Yeah.
Which helps make some of this stuff really more palatable when he does do some kind of scummy things. I also do want to just highlight that listening to him singing like Mia Sebastian's duet or The City of Stars after listening to I'm Just Ken, it hits different.
It does. He's so good. So one thing I don't like about Gosling's character is how obsessive he is towards jazz. Now, I get it. It's a character, and I do understand the idea of being obsessive towards a certain kind of art. You and me, we're on Letterboxd. We see this all the time with people who are obsessed with movies. I myself am obsessed with movies, but not to the point that I'm as obsessive as Gosling is towards jazz. Like one thing that really indicates just how obsessive this guy is his first scene when he walks into his apartment and his sister, I believe that character's supposed to be his sister, is like sitting on a stool, and he's just like, can you not sit on that stool? Like some jazz artist, I forget what he said exactly, like sat on it.
It was like and she asked like, what did Miles Davis piss on it or something?
Yeah, he's just like but so like I get it, like it's an important piece of memorabilia, but at the same time, well, one, why did you put the stool in the kitchen if she's not allowed to sit on it? And two, it's a chair, dude. Like, why are we obsessing over things like that? That's just something that I don't really click with when it comes to appreciating art, and that is glorifying like pieces of material that the artist touched. Like that has never been something I've been interested in when it comes to appreciating art and artists. Like I think that's very obsessive and kind of weird. Because it's just a chair, like at the end of the day, it is just a chair. I guess it's cool that somebody who is very wickedly talented worked on the chair, but it's a chair. Like
you have to be a super fan in order to really know whose chair it is. It's not like you have like a poster of a musical act being advertised with one of the musician's signatures on it or anything. It's a chair they sat on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like gloating how you're shaking the hand that shook the hand of the president. It's like, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't know. Like, there's other things I agree with him on, where he goes to like that jazz club and he's like telling Mia like, hey, like, this is jazz. This is really, he's like describing how like, the saxophonist has like a hijacked the song, and like, oh, now the trumpeter is doing his own thing. Like, that's a really cool scene where like, that's when you realize like, okay, so he's not just talking out of his ass. He knows what he's talking about. And that's one thing I do appreciate about this character, is that he's not just some asshole who just likes jazz. He is actually a very wickedly talented jazz musician. Like throughout the movie, he proves himself to be really good at playing jazz. He's not just obsessed with jazz because he's obsessed with listening to it. He's obsessed with it to the point that he knows how to play it very well. So I appreciate that. But at the same time, sometimes you're just like, dude, get laid. Like, stop. Like, this is really weird. But
yes, especially like if you were to compare it to Mia's character, who feels a lot more complete in terms of a more diverse range of not only like interests but also like dynamics as a character.
Yeah, no, I definitely related to Mia a lot more, where like you definitely get the sense that she is very passionate for what she does. She's very much a fan of old cinema, wants to continue the legacy of old cinema, but in a way that isn't weird like Sebastian is. Like, it's a little more grounded in reality, which I appreciate because I can relate to that. But
hers feels more like a passion, while
exactly,
his feels more like an obsession.
yes, passion versus obsession. Those are two very completely different things. Now, again, if it wasn't Gosling, I'd probably have a lot more criticisms for this character, but I think Gosling does do a good job as this character. I'm it's minor nitpicks with him, but again, it is what it is. Like, it's just a weird character is all.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of other things. I mean, there's other like things I noticed, like when I will say like it's kind of annoying when he gets hired to like play Christmas carols at the restaurant, and like J.K. Simmons, which ironically J.K. Simmons is playing a character in a Damien Chazelle movie, and he doesn't care for jazz. Like, that threw me for a loop. I'm just like, wait a minute.
Polar opposite.
Yeah, exactly. But like the fact that he's just like playing jazz. He's playing these Christmas carols in that restaurant, but then he like goes off into like free jazz, and like people are just like, oh, why is he doing that? And then he gets fired over it. It's just like, really? You get fired over that? That's just, I get it. He wasn't playing the Christmas carols, but like, I don't know. It was just kind of a weird. It was kind of a weird. I get it. It's supposed to show that he's just like, this is why he's so obsessive, is because the world is like fighting against him for his love of jazz, or he views it that way. So I get it. It's still just kind of a weird thing, but also it just shows he kind of seems like kind of a prick to work with, because he's just like, no, we play it my way. And you're just like, dude, come on.
To me, I've always really felt at that moment, the mannerism of the J.K. Simmons in that scene has always sort of demonstrated a idea that Sebastian has done this before.
Yes.
And he hasn't just done this before, he's done this multiple times before. And so, like, this is sort of like a last straw moment to Simmons, but he's not going to do like a Fletcher lash out to him because he wants to uphold the dignity of the club and not get a bunch of people's attention.
That's true. And you know what? I do agree with Ryan Gosling later on in the movie. Like, when he's talking with Mia, and Mia's just like, oh yeah, I hate jazz. And Gosling's just like, well, why? Like, that's such a blanket statement. Like, well, how could you hate jazz? And I think that's something that, like, because like when it comes to musical genres, you always have your least favorite somewhere. People will say rap or country, like those are like kind of the big two that people will go to. But I've always felt that like jazz is kind of a weird one to hate, because it's just like, it's just such an easygoing like freestyle that, like, I don't know, you just kind of have to try to hate it. Like, I understand there's such thing as bad jazz, but like, I don't know, I've never heard jazz bad enough that I would say that I hate it, like
there's also like so many different variations.
Yeah, that too.
It's like, if you're not big into like the big band or freestyle like jazz, then why not do like some more vocal jazz? with like classics like Frank Sinatra or Louis Armstrong, like Count Basie,
Dave Steinbeck.
Yeah.
Take Five. I love Take Five. I think that's Dave Steinbeck. I may be talking out of my ass. But in any case, like, yeah, no, I like jazz. I like listening to it. Yeah, it is more of a background thing. Like, I'm not like Gosling where like I listen to jazz intently and I'm just like loving every second of it. I put it on as background music, but I love it just the same. Like, I would never say I hate jazz. Like, I just feel like that's kind of a weird thing to say you hate. Like, it's like, oh, I hate breathing. It's like, why? Like,
because breathing is boring.
Yeah, I mean, breathing is like, boring.
Sometimes the slightly more boring stuff is better than like deep breathing or heavy breathing. That takes a lot of effort. I don't want to be doing that constantly.
Yeah. Breathing is highly overrated, if you ask me. Can we talk about the Griffith Observatory playing a role in this movie? So I love So one thing I want to bring up is like the way this movie uses references towards other media. So one thing I want to say is that like there's that scene at the beginning when like this actress walks into the cafe that Mia's working in and everyone's just going like, oh, it's her. Like they're all whispering like, oh, it's this big celebrity. But like it's just some lady to us because she's not like actually a famously named actress and they never say her name. They're just like, oh, it's her. Like, ooh. It's like, and I kind of appreciate that because I feel like in any other movie, they probably would have taken that opportunity to make it like a glorified cameo, but they don't. Like, it's just some lady to us, but like, you know, she's important because everybody in the cafe is like staring her down and being like, oh, it's what's her name? And I just want to tie that in to the idea that the fact that like, you know, this movie could have taken an opportunity to become like a reference fest. You know what I'm trying to say?
Instead, it's the most kind of references that you're getting are like classic media. Like I remember outside of I think it was one of the auditioning theaters, there's like a poster for Rebel Without a Cause, which is also name dropped inside the film. And more so over anything else, it's more so just like homaging to a really important film in filmmaking history.
Yeah, exactly. Like what I love about this movie is that, you know, it takes its references because one thing that kind of bothers me with movies like this, where it's like a celebration of art and media, it's just like, it sometimes devolves into like, oh, isn't this piece of media you're familiar with? Isn't that a great movie? Like now that we've mentioned it, you have good memories.
Just Babylon flashbacks.
Oh no! Oh no!
The ending of Babylon has like this minute long sizzle reel of a bunch of movies that are supposedly important to film history. You should have been inside on Discord when I was talking about that.
Yeah.
I lost it when I saw Avatar on that.
Oh no!
I was like, bruh, you included no Disney movies. But the one Disney movie you included is this one.
I imagine they didn't include CIA SMH.
No, they didn't even have the audacity to consider CIA.
Oh my goodness. But so my point is like, you know, they mention these movies to give you like a serotonin rush to make you remember like, oh, I remember those movies. I'm feeling happy remembering those movies. And now I feel happy watching this movie. But like, I don't get that from how it references Rebel Without a Cause. So yes, they do
It's more like it's just a natural part of this world. It's like, yeah, this is a movie everybody knows about. It's big, it's well known, it's important, but that's as far as we're going to stretch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we're going to have our own little Oh My Disney scene where we have all of the the actors from that particular era of film all coming out as their characters to remind people, hey, don't you love The Iron Giant? Don't you want to rewatch that again? Look, it's the Addams Family. Go watch the new Addams Family movie.
Exactly. Yeah. So I like that they do go see Rebel Without a Cause, and it's just them watching the movie in the theater, and then like the projector kind of breaks down, and then rather than making it a scene where they're just like watching the movie and being like, oh, isn't this a good movie? Like they take that opportunity to leave the theater, go to the actual Griffith Observatory, and make their own iconic scene out of it. Like, because that's when they're like dancing in the observatory in that scene. Like, that's a great use of the that's just a great use of the movie where you're just like, oh yes, that was in the past, but now this is the future. We're gonna take that.
We're making our own thing using
exactly
the inspiration we're gaining from the past.
Exactly.
And it's completely different.
Yeah.
I'd even call it like possibly my second favorite scene in the movie, mostly just because of how the music it takes center stage here.
It does
very much guiding you through the visual storytelling, rather than having all of these characters sing and talk about what they're feeling right now. It's instead giving a moment for us, the audience, to sort of understand how they're feeling through the visuals.
Yeah, it's a great scene. It's one of the best modern uses of the Griffith Observatory. This movie and Moonfall. Remember when it was in Moonfall? I just had to mention that because it's in Moonfall, of course. Yeah, one of my favorite musical numbers, not to backtrack a little, but it's fine. We're going all over the place. Is What a Waste of a Lovely Night. That scene where they're walking to their cars and then they're like tap dancing on the street. Like that was phenomenal. I love that musical number. I thought it was fantastic. And it's used in like all the posters from what I've seen, like, or most of the posters because of that scene.
It's the big moment that really just highlights, I think, like the main points of the narrative. Because you have Mia and you have Sebastian, and they're together in a sort of romantic way, with the backdrop of the idealized LA of sunsets overhanging everything else. It's just more or less the perfect moment to capture what this movie is truly about from a narrative perspective.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's just fantastic. I love it. One of my favorite scenes. Trying to think of what else I want to bring up next. I do like the inclusion of John Legend's character as kind of like this friend in quotation marks to Sebastian. How he's like, because like, you know, you first meet him and Sebastian's obviously very put off by him. He's just like, oh, hey, whatever. Like he's just kind of,
we knew each other, but now we don't really know each other.
Exactly. And I love the scene where they're like, where like he eventually is just like, all right, I'll come work for you in your band, and they're like playing together, and there's that part where they are playing jazz, and then they kind of add in that like little dubstep beat to it. I believe that's what they were going for, like this like dubstep jazz.
It's more of a hip hop rather than dubstep. Dubstep is usually a way more electronic and heavier bass.
Yeah,
you think back to like the Taylor Swift 2012 kind of era stuff. With,
I remember
Trouble.
Skrillex. The good old days.
The classic nostalgia age. The golden age of YouTube. Back when Freebird was being advertised to come out in theaters.
Oh, classic Freebirds. Yeah, but like one thing I wanted to bring up with John Legend's character is like, I love the line of him saying, how are you going to be a revolutionary if you're such a traditionalist to Sebastian? Because that's a really great point towards his character. Like, yes, Ryan Gosling is very much he's very much somebody who wants to teach people the joys and the wonders of jazz, but he also wants to be a well-respected jazz musician as well. And it's just like, he kind of has to make a balance with the two. Like, because being an artist is being this revolutionary, like the way you stand out is being like this unique revolutionary, like doing something that has never been done before. But like, how can you do that?
I think like from a certain perspective, this also shows a little bit of a contradiction within Sebastian.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
he knows a great deal of the history of jazz, but I think he's also forgetting about like really key moments in history, like when Miles Davis released "Bitches Brew." And it just completely changed the landscape of how jazz would be approached for that decade.
Mm-hmm.
Or when soul started moving in and sort of combining jazz into that.
Yeah.
Or when jazz fusion started becoming really big, where you're mixing jazz alongside other genres of music like R&B and rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
And I think here, like what John Legend's character is doing with bringing in more hip hop trends and ideas into traditional jazz is a continuation of the constant idea of this music evolving that Sebastian doesn't want to acknowledge is reality.
Yeah.
He wants to bring it back to a very specific era that he's most laser focused on. And I think he considers to be jazz as a broad sense, but he's also forgetting that's not exactly what jazz is all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the great thing about that line is that you understand like both sides of it. Like you understand what John Legend is saying. Like, yeah, change needs to happen, but you also understand Sebastian's idea of, well, change is also scary because this is not at all what I want to do with jazz. But
you don't want to move too far away from the past.
Exactly.
You want to preserve at least a little bit of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Here is that in moving towards hip hop, what if we go entirely hip hop? That's not quite what I want to do.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's one of those things that I think the movie just lets us as the audience to kind of figure it out for ourselves. Like we get to kind of formulate our own perspective on that. And I appreciate that. I love when movies do that. As I've mentioned numerous times before.
Sometimes less is more.
Exactly. Yeah, and then obviously we get the third act breakup, but I mean, I'm not entirely against it, you know.
The third act breakup, I mean, it makes sense in the narrative progression of the film. I do think that was a little something that bothered me a bit when I saw it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But over reflection, I think it just makes sense for this kind of story.
Oh, yeah.
Help really bring up the ideas. These guys are finally getting into a groove where they might actually be able to hit something big. And out of the two, Sebastian is the one that's most likely in this situation to get big in comparison to Mia, who, while is making it, there is still so much gray area where things can immediately fall flat on her face, which it ends up happening in the third act. And she's trying to rely on Sebastian to be there for her without considering Sebastian's own personal desires and needs as someone who is finally given the opportunity to make it big.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you see the difference in the two. Like, yeah, Ryan, like Sebastian is experiencing some sort of success, and then Mia, meanwhile, does her one woman show, and oh god, the shot of like her like bowing and then like the lights come out in the auditorium and barely anybody's in the theater, you're just like, oh, it hurts. It really hurts.
It's so painful because we've seen her struggling for so long.
Yeah.
And we're so rooting for her to finally make it, and reality crashing on her. It's painful.
Yeah. But no, go ahead.
You also truly feel the emotions of all of the characters in this situation in the third act breakup here. I very much hate the third act breakup trope a whole lot.
Yes.
I don't agree with Doug Walker when he always says, yeah, there's a third act breakup, but it's fine because it only lasts for like 5 minutes. Just don't have it entirely if it's only going to last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And usually when it happens, it's purely to create drama for a little while. Comparatively here, where it feels like an integral part of the story. You can't really tell the specific personal narrative without them branching off over creative struggles.
I think that's why we consider the third act breakup as kind of a cliche, is because, I mean, naturally, you know, yeah, it does build tension and drama, but like it should only do so when it comes naturally. You know, the reason we consider it a cliche is because it happens so often in movies, and like most often it doesn't feel earned. And that's why we consider it a cliche, because then it's like, oh, this feels so forced. But sometimes movies can do it pretty well. And I agree, La La Land does it really well because, yeah, the build up to them, you know, experiencing different levels of success and not really appreciating that, like, it was bound to happen, basically. So I appreciate that this movie did it in such an interesting way that I did not see it as a cliche. Like, I was like, no, this is naturally happening, and I appreciate that. But I mean, not only does it happen, it happens so then they don't end up together. That's a big thing with this movie. The two main leads do not become a thing in the end.
The ending just in general is sort of a big deal in the grand scheme of this movie, because it helps make this feel like so much more like a realistic romance than in most other pictures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I'm personally not super big in like asking for my fictional movies to be super realistic.
No, of course
not.
not.
Like, I'm a really hardcore defender of a lot of classic Disney romances where a lot of people will criticize those films for having very one-note relationships. I've never really been bothered all that much about that. But here it's like, this is the kind of realistic romance that people have been looking for in these kinds of stories.
Mm-hmm.
They look like good pairs for each other, and in one reality, as the movie shows, they could have been a great couple together.
Yeah,
but that's not where their career trajectories really took them.
Yeah, and I like how when it's established, because like there's that 5-year gap. I like how it's just like winter. 5 years later, you're just like, whoa, like eat your heart out, Endgame. But anyway, like I like that. It's kind of given to us through like little bits and pieces. Like you see them doing their own thing, and then you see Emma Stone like go to her house, and she's like, "Hi, babe," and then she approaches a different man. You're just like, ah. But like you understand.
And also, like, from the angle, it kind of looks like Ryan Gosling until the camera pans over to the side of his face, when you're like, did he grow out his hair?
Yeah.
And then you see his facial features, and you're like, that's not Ryan Gosling. It's an imposter.
It's an imposter. Yeah. But like at the same time, you feel kind of hurt, but at the same time, you're just like, I guess this is just where it went. Twas not meant to be. So,
and I think that that alternate universe Flash that happens when Mia is watching Sebastian play. Seb's, I think that really helps make the audience feel a bit more at ease, because it gives them a perspective of what could have been in comparison to what is in reality.
Yeah,
making this more of like a tragically happy ending, because they have what they want. It's just this isn't exactly what the audience wanted,
right?
But the audience still has something that they can grab onto because of that beautiful ending.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, what I like about that is that they just so happen to go to the jazz club, which he ends up calling Seb's in the end. Like earlier in the movie, he's just like, "No, I'm calling it chicken on a stick" or something like that. Some weird, dumb thing, but they end up calling it Seb's, and you're just like, oh yes, he did the thing.
You could also see as being like a growth of his character, going away from being so obsessed with the history of jazz and creating something a bit more original and personal to him.
Exactly. He still has the stool on display, but like again, like he still ended up changing the name of the jazz club, and like, it's little things. Like you don't have to like completely change your personality. So I entirely get that. And I love, this is to bring back how good of an actor Gosling is when he like introduces after he's like introduced all the band members and he's like on stage and he's like talking to the audience. And then he sees Mia, and that one shot of Gosling, like, he sees her, and he just he's like, you don't really see it in his face, but you see it in his eyes. He's holding back so much emotion in just his eyes in that scene. And that blew me away. I'm just like, holy God, like this dude, how has he not won anything? Like, I know I don't respect the Oscars at all, but like, my God, like something, come on. Like, he's so good.
This is the kind of movie and specifically the kind of actor that would be up there, at least to be nominated for more than he gets nominated for.
Yeah, he's so good.
Like, I haven't seen him in like all of the fantastic things I've heard him being in, but so many shots from so many movies and so many scenes from movies I have seen with him in, it just makes me ask, how is this guy not gotten enough recognition.
Yeah, because like I feel like we do. I remember I was bringing this up on the Drive and Duel episode when I talked with John, because like he was in Drive. You know, he does so much as like this with like so many restrained performances, but he's really good at what he does. Like he can like communicate so much in so little, and that's just super impressive. And like we kind of take that for granted because we kind of associate him with like other big named celebrities who are, you don't really see them as like, you know, actors. You see them as mega stars. Like you don't really see someone like, I don't know, Chris Evans or George Clooney as like, you know, Daniel Day-Lewis level actors. You see him as, well, celebrities, you know, like there's a difference between
most of the celebrity types that we like naturally think of as being good actors are more so like the character actor types, like
Yes.
Jack Black or Jim Carrey.
Mhm.
Mostly because those are the kinds of actors that like really give out a grand performance that people can look at and they can go, that is something that I cannot do.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like Ryan Gosling is a step above like your typical celebrity big names. Like he actually does give like really good performances whenever he's in movies. So shout out to Ryan. I mean, he's a very famous actor, so clearly he is getting recognition, but I feel like he could get a little more recognition for the kinds of work he does.
There's a lot of rumors that he actually has like a very, very strong chance at winning Best Lead Actor at the Oscars this year. And I mean, I'll happily see him get an Oscar if need be.
For Ken.
He's going to have some really tough competition this year, but if he does, I'll be very, very happy for him.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's the Oscars. I don't really respect them, but it would be pretty funny. Now,
it's always nice to see when the Oscars like actually respecting something good, you know, like when they gave Parasite and Everything Everywhere the award.
Mm-hmm.
Those were just really nice moments.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, as I've explained before, I'm not even when something like that feels earned, like those Oscars, I would say something like, I really liked when Blade Runner 2049 won Best Cinematography. I felt that was earned, but at the same time, because they screw up so often, that like those wins never really feel as earned as they should be, you know, like I'm glad they won. I would never say they didn't deserve it. There's plenty of other winners that didn't deserve it, but like those, I'm glad, but at the same time, they just don't hold the weight that they should. But speaking of the Oscars, we kind of have to bring it up. Unfortunately, this movie's legacy is kind of tainted because of the fucking award show that it almost won. But the Oscars being the Oscars, they couldn't even do that correctly. For those of you who don't remember, I mean, I can't imagine why you wouldn't. It's like one of the most famous Oscar stories ever at this point, is when Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway went up there to announce the Best Picture. They got the wrong envelope, and they said La La Land, but turns out Moonlight won that year. And it was just a whole big embarrassment.
It was so funny.
It really was.
Like everyone was so excited when it won Best Picture. Then they had to come up and they're like, "No, wait, we mixed it up. This is not the right award. It was in fact Moonlight. Moonlight won Best Picture." And the audience was like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah.
It was so funny because like you heard so many people excited about La La Land, and then Moonlight was the winner, and it's like half as much excitement.
Yeah. No, look, I love Moonlight. I think it's a very good movie. I'm not mad that it won Best Picture, but at the same time, don't tease us like that, you know? Because like La La Land, if it won, wasn't a bad thing either. Like either one of those movies could have won Best Picture. It doesn't matter. But like now that both those movies are forever tainted because of this obvious screw up, you're just like, damn it. Like these are two really great films, and you've ruined their legacies, Academy. Good job.
They're forever indulged in this infinite conflict where you always are forced to ask the question, which one is better, even though they have nothing in common with one another, aside from
Exactly.
that fiasco.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's so ridiculous. Like, I might prefer La La Land over Moonlight, but like at the same time, I don't think it truly matters. Like, I think both of those movies are excellent in their own ways. So like, it's really futile to compare the two. But
I mean,
you know,
it's kind of like asking if you prefer Alien or Aliens. It's
true.
a tricky question because one is a horror film and one is an action film.
Yeah,
And they're both absolutely amazing. And I think the preference there really just comes down to which do you prefer more, horror or action?
exactly. But despite the Academy screwing up as usual, I see, it's still an excellent film. So is there anything else you want to talk about with it before we get into this Blu-ray I have it on?
Well, I personally actually own this movie on 4K. I got the
Ooh.
Best Buy exclusive steelbook, which uses the artwork inspired by that final scene of the movie. Very, very beautiful moment. A lot of
Interesting.
pretty colors, a lot of pinks and magentas all about. Very pretty. I actually own both of these movies physically, which very convenient.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I have it on a standard Blu-ray that advertises it has 6 Academy Award wins, including Best Director, Best Actress, Best Cinematography, Best Original Song, but no Best Picture. No.
Very unfortunate.
One thing I want to say about this Blu-ray, distributed by, well, not just distributed, the whole movie was made by our good friends at Lionsgate, which, Lionsgate, you just keep hitting those home runs.
At this point, it's like I am pro the physical media of all of the major studios except for WB. I have bought 3 Blu-ray/4Ks from WB now, and all of the digital codes are expired.
Oh.
In comparison to literally every other studio, where like Disney digital codes, those things are immortal.
Yeah.
I have found digital codes for like DVDs that I've owned since like 2010, and those things work.
Wow, that's actually really cool, actually.
Here, however, David Zaslav's like, no, the codes expire 1 year after the Blu-ray releases and 2 years after the 4K releases, unless we say so, in which case it'll expire like 4 months. And I'm like, I didn't even have a 4K player like 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's... What are you doing? Oh my god. It's like, no, we can make even more embarrassing decisions than the last one. It's like, ugh, god.
Silly thing is that some of these movies, like Beetlejuice, for example, it isn't on HBO Max. So, like, you can't watch it legally digitally. What?
Oh, Beetlejuice? Oh, for fuck's sake.
What is driving this decision? I need to know.
Yeah.
Why is Lionsgate Disney? Why is Disney the good guy in this situation? Disney is not supposed to be the good guy.
No, Lionsgate's supposed to be the good guy.
Lionsgate is our hero. They gave us John Wick.
They gave us CIA.
No, they did that really weird thing with the John Wick 3 digital code where you had to redeem it through like this special Lionsgate website that doesn't work anymore.
Oh.
And they're only distributing John Wick 3 codes that way still because they're too lazy to print a new one. Weird.
Wild. Oh, I guess the last thing I just want to mention about this Lionsgate Blu-ray is that at the beginning, when I put it in, it has this really weird electronic postcard that just says "Greetings from La La Land" and it has this like very nice mellow music playing. And it happens before the commercials and trailers. It's just like "Greetings from La La Land," and then you never see it again. It was really strange, but I guess it was kind of cool. Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain, but like it's just something that showed up on this Blu-ray.
It's like that would kind of make sense if it had sort of like a grindhouse kind of thing where like
Sure.
the trailers that followed it were like thematically appropriate with the movie. Like if the trailers were instead like trailers of golden age Hollywood films, like
Mm,
the kinds of things like Singing in the Rain that inspired these kinds of musicals, or Rebel Light Without a Cause,
that
that
would be
would kind
cool.
of make sense.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming like all the trailers that played were like 2016, 2017 upcoming releases.
Yeah, probably. I don't even remember. I skipped through them because I just do not care for trailers.
Yeah, I usually don't remember the kinds of trailers. I sometimes like seeing trailers in front of my Blu-rays and
Yeah.
DVDs, more so because it reminds me of how old some of these Blu-rays are. I
Yeah.
watched Robin Hood on Blu-ray and I was like, oh yeah, this thing came out in 2013. That's when Planes, Fire, and Rescue was coming out. I forgot that movie existed.
Oh.
Thank you, Disney, for reminding me of Planes, Fire, and Rescue.
That's right. It's going to be on the 100 Blu-ray release where they ran out of movies, so they had to come up with like Planes, Fire and Rescue, the Heffalump movie.
It's like Disney ran out of all of the Disney animation and the Pixar animation and all of the Tim Burton stop motion stuff that they own. So they're like, Tinkerbell.
Yeah, Tinkerbell.
You remember Tinkerbell? We made like 6 of those things.
Yeah.
I watched all 6 of them.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of them.
No, why would you? Oh, well, honestly though, this was a very good watch. I love the movie. I'm glad you recommended it because it was a nice reminder of why I like this movie a lot. I think it's very fantastic. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to get rid of this Blu-ray because from the sounds of it, this like 4K steelbook that you're describing sounds really cool. And I'd rather have this movie that I respect a lot on like a much nicer 4K than like this crappy Blu-ray that also comes with a DVD version of the movie. I don't know. I need something a little nicer for this movie. You dig?
Yeah, you need something that like really makes the colors pop and like
Yes.
really allows you to hear the sound and the music in the greatest audio quality possible.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm definitely getting rid of this Blu-ray, but it does have a place in the collection for sure. I imagine you're keeping yours.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right. Do we want to move on to the next movie that we wanted to talk about?
So.
All right.
Yeah.
So, also in my collection, I have here our second movie, The Breakfast Club. But not just any Breakfast Club physical media release. It's an occasional VHS tape. So, this is exciting.
And on top of that, it's an occasional VHS tape that works.
It does, yeah. That's right. It does. This one did work. So, Silence of the Lambs was just a fluke. It broke on me, but luckily Breakfast Club didn't. So, take that, Israel.
VHS is not dead. It is still alive and living.
It's still alive and just as crappy quality as I remember. So, yeah, luckily this one worked. There were no commercials and trailers that played at the beginning, which was appreciated. But so to start off, it opens with a David Bowie quote, which I took a picture of. I'll put it in the episode at the end because I took a picture of it. Even though it's white text on a black background, God, the quality is so terrible on VHS. Like you can barely read it. So I had to pause it and like squint my eyes and be like, what does that say? David Bowie? What? But it's a very apt line to intro this movie with, The Breakfast Club. So Ketchup. Before I go any further, what did you think of The Breakfast Club?
Oh man, I mean, this movie is just wonderful as well. Like this is another kind of John Hughes banger type film. this movie in general, I think, is really unique in terms of like the way it depicts children,
Mm,
juvenile characters inside of film.
yeah.
For the longest time, a lot of movies have really and writers have really struggled with like properly depicting children.
Yeah.
Partly because they opted to employ like young adults to play the roles of teenagers, which we've mentioned Rebel Without a Cause a couple of times. But that movie is really important for a lot of hallmarks, and it made in terms of like getting us to a position where it feels like these movies are actually speaking towards their target demographic of teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
which is a weird thing to say here because this is an R-rated movie, which has always
Mm.
really surprised me. Because I've always expected that this would like really try and get teenagers to come in, since it very much focuses on the teenage struggle. But it's raw. It goes all out with really showing you the stuff that actual teenagers engage themselves with,
Yeah.
and a lot of the terminology and mannerisms and exchanges found inside this movie. I mean, that's very teenage.
Mm-hmm.
This is possibly like the first movie out there by a major studio that feels like it was made with teenagers actually in mind.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I really like about it, you know, kind of a stark contrast to the previous movie, like how I was describing La La Land as like this very sterile, very clean kind of movie. This is a very dirty looking high school. Like there's just trash everywhere. There's graffiti everywhere, which is exactly what high school is like. The high school I went to, piece of shit. Like, because like it's just, you got these hormonal teenagers running around with so much angst and so much just happening to them that, like, yeah, real life is kind of dirty, you know? Like, so I appreciate that. I know it's like a very little detail that the movie didn't have to do. Like, they didn't have to film it at like this dirty high school. They could have filmed it at like a studio.
But like it's a really big and important
Yes.
move in terms of like actually making this movie feel like it is actually talking directly to teenagers. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, school isn't clean.
No.
It's dirty as shit.
Yeah.
It's a horrible place for you guys to be at because nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
Just nobody in general cares. It's like they're getting paid and they're trying to move people on and maybe trying to imprint themselves onto you. That's it. They
Exactly.
don't care about you. So
Yeah.
for most teenagers, it's the question of why should we care? And it's
Mm-hmm.
reflective of like how much trash and graffiti and litter is found everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in like this kind of twisted realistic way. It's really refreshing and nice to see.
I agree. Yeah, no, because like when I think of my favorite movies, I don't think of angsty teen dramas like at all, because my experience with high school movies is just the most, again, to bring up La La Land, but like more so in a negative way, like the most sterile Hollywood bullshit, you know, where it's just like, it's kind of glorifying high school as like this amazing time. Like, oh, isn't high school great? Isn't it cool? Like, so many cool things happen in high school. This is where your life peaks, man. You're just like, whoa, that's messed up, actually. Like, I don't know. Like, just, I don't want to necessarily blame movies like High School Musical, because I like High School Musical as like this nostalgic movie for me, but like I feel like it does kind of create this very unrealistic expectation of what high school is like, you know, where
A lot of Disney Channel and Nickelodeon sitcoms
yes.
really buy into this idea,
Mm-hmm.
which is always half a weird thing to see since that is post Breakfast Club material.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also remember that like the Breakfast Club is also to some people parents a little controversial just because
Sure.
it is actually depicting real life. This is how kids actually are. This is how they truly feel, and you might not want to admit it, but that's the harsh reality.
Yeah. I mean, there is some things that I feel like are a little dated in this movie, but at the same time,
Oh no, absolutely. It's like
yeah.
there are so many instances of slurs being used that I never enjoy hearing that kind of stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
I love the Bill and Ted movies so much,
Yeah.
but that joke being used inside of them, it hurts every time I watch it.
Well, it was the
Uh,
80s.
And I mean, we also can't ignore the scene that a lot of Letterboxd users seem to really hate when Bender's looking at Claire's,
Yeah.
underneath the desk.
Her
And
special
yeah,
area.
Molly Ringwald wrote like this big essay a couple of years ago, actually like criticizing the movie heavily for these outdated elements being included inside of the movie. To a certain degree, I kind of agree, just like from the perspective of they make me feel uncomfortable and I just don't like them being inside the movie. At the same time, though, again, this is just real life.
Yeah.
Like,
I for
as
one,
much
am
as-
shocked that Bender, the criminal, is being a weird, creepy person when he's under the desk at that scene. It's just like, of course he's going to do that.
like, it's not out of character.
No, it's very much in character.
And also, I should also make it very clear, because I feel there's so many people that don't know this. No, that wasn't actually Molly Ringwald being filmed for that specific shot.
Oh, really?
That was an adult.
Okay.
It's not Molly Ringwald. She was still a teenager at that time, so it would have been illegal.
Okay. You know what? That didn't even pop into my mind, but you know what? Now that it has, ugh. But like, no, if it wasn't, the
sometimes
good.
when people are criticizing that specific scene, they bring up the fact that it is towards that character, and I will counter that by just saying it was done by a consenting adult. Yeah, it's imprinted on that character, but the actor wasn't the one engaged inside of that specific scene.
Right. Okay. So, but she still wrote an essay about how it's problematic. It's like, well,
She did.
Yeah.
She also commented on 16 Candles as well, which
you know what? 16 Candles I'll give her.
I didn't have the time to watch it beforehand. But based on what I've heard, I think she might have something on that one.
Yeah, you know what? I'll give her 16 Candles. I do not like 16 Candles from what I remember. It's been years, but I really do. You know, we talk about like the timelessness of this movie. 16 Candles is very much a dated movie. I do not remember relating to that at all.
Yeah.
It was actually the first time I watched a like kind of an annoying teenager character being like, ugh, I hate my parents. Like, I hate my family. Like, you know, usually those kinds of characters in movies, I'm like, all right, you stuck up bitch. Like, be grateful. But like this one time, I'm just like, no, your family is horrible. Like, Jesus, like, what, are you okay? Like, should we call Child Protection Services? Like,
I didn't quite manage to get to that one, but I did watch Weird Science beforehand, and I do think it sort of falls into a similar category as that. Because, again, there are some very troublesome content inside of that film. Yeah. But unlike The Breakfast Club, it's like some of those scenes I cannot excuse because, like, they did not need to be included in the movie.
No.
Is the movie really funny? Yes, it is very, very funny. Are those elements good? No, they are not.
Yeah, no. But I think Breakfast Club, I think out of all of these, like, dated 80s movies, does have more timelessness to it. So like, you know what, and because like it actually has a point to all of this, so like you definitely understand
the timelessness leaves more into the fact that every single element that we see as problematic today is still found inside of high schools and a teenage juveniles to this day, 40 years later, and it's still constant. It's like slurs. We hate them. They are still being used on a regular basis.
I think they were used more when I was in high school than they were in the 80s. So
they got really bad at a certain point. They're getting better now. I can say from experience that it's still not particularly good.
No, but that's because they're teenagers. Like, you know, they're still figuring out the world. Like, of course, they're not.
A lot of people are also like there's a lot of people, somebody I follow as well, they made a comment on specifically the ending and how certain characters change or get together that makes you go, wait, but why? Why would they do this? Doesn't that like run counter to like everything that we know about those characters? Yes, it does. Same time though, I've seen those exact situations play out inside of high school.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, it's stupid and it doesn't entirely make sense, like from like a logistical standpoint of these characters, but they're stupid teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
This is what stupid teenagers do.
Yeah.
People that have expressed how much they hate each other will get together with each other romantically. I guess the question you then have to bring up though is, does that a new style that they're wearing that they're kind of expressing that they like, will that last?
Mm-hmm.
Well, on Monday when they come to school, will they be a couple? Is that how this character is going to express themselves when they go to school?
Well, that's brought up in the movie when, Brian is just like, come Monday morning, are we going to talk to each other? Like that, yeah. Like the movie brings that up specifically.
And from our perspective, it kind of looks like they might, because they have grown to really appreciate one another. They've had a whole lot of great chemistry, and they've really gone to understand that their own personal struggles, they're very similar to the kinds of struggles that each and every one of them has.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like they're still inclined to sticking with the cliques that they've assigned themselves to.
Yeah.
And you have to ask yourself, are they going to continue to stick with their cliques, or are they going to be are they going to be a Giga Chad and just say, no, I will not. I will make a new clique where I say no to cliques.
Yeah, see, that's the good thing that's something I love about the best kind of John Hughes movies, like this, Ferris Bueller, I would even put, because I feel like what these movies do really well is capturing a moment. Like, you're not really, like, the movie itself is not very concerned with the past or the future. Like, it's concerned with the present. Ferris Bueller is a movie about a kid living it up for this one day, and people are always like, "Oh, what about the consequences?" It's like, it doesn't matter about the consequences. Like, what matters
who cares about the consequences?
Who cares about the consequences?
He wants to have a good time on this particular day, and
I think
that's what matters.
Yeah, and I think that's what this movie also brings up, is like, it doesn't matter what these kids did to get into detention. I mean, it kind of does, because we hear what they did to get there. But like, it also doesn't matter what happens beyond this detention. What matters is the present detention that they're experiencing right now. Like, they're here on the Saturday morning, and that's it. Like, that's what matters. What matters beyond, nothing else matters beyond that. Like, what matters is this day, these characters interacting on this very morning. Like, that's the most important part. And I feel like that's what John Hughes does great. That's what he does best, is like capturing these moments of just these characters interacting and just like experiencing the moment. That's what I love about this movie, is just like, you don't care about what's going to happen beyond, because that doesn't matter. We never got a Breakfast Club 2. We don't need a Breakfast Club 2.
There's literally, if we make a Breakfast Club 2, it runs completely counter to every single point in this movie.
Exactly. Yeah, I want to talk about some details that I love. One, the teacher is played by Dwayne Robinson from Die Hard, Paul Gleason. One of my favorite lines from Die Hard. I'm not the one who just got butt fucked on national TV. Dwayne, that guy. He was also in the second Ewoks movie. Fun fact. So, but anyway, he plays the shitty teacher, and I love this teacher character because of how much I hate him.
Slight correction, he's not a teacher, he's actually the principal.
Is he the principal? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, he's the principal, which helps add extra layers to like specifically the scene with him and Bender inside of the closet, where he just openly says that he doesn't give a shit about Bender.
Ooh, yeah.
And that nobody will believe him
hearing
all of the threats that he throws out, because he's the one with power.
Mm,
Bender has no power. Bender
exactly.
is seen as a delinquent by everybody. Who is going to believe Bender? He then offers Bender to throw a punch to prove his superiority, and Bender's like, no, no. To me, it kind of like reminds me sort of like Draco Malfoy at the in the last Harry Potter movie, where it's like, yeah, he's not a good person, but he also has his limits. Draco
Mm-hmm.
is not going to kill people. That goes against his own personal beliefs. Bender is not going to assault a teacher. He's
Mm-hmm.
going to do stupid stuff, but that is going too far to him.
Well, see, what I love about that is that, like, the teacher, Vernon, he's like, not the teacher, the principal, Vernon. We'll just call him Vernon because that's the character's name. Vernon knows that if he was to be the one to throw the first punch, he couldn't get away with it because, well, he assaulted a student. That's very bad. So that's why he's saying, like, come on, I'm begging you to punch me in the face, because he knows that if Bender was the one to punch him in the face, then he'd have a reason to beat the shit out of Bender, and he'd just be like, oh, it was self-defense. This student attacked me. And like, it's just this weird power imbalance that I think is fascinating. And also, just not only is Vernon a piece of shit to Bender, he's a piece of shit to every character. Like, when Andrew is like helping him move like the bookcase to keep the door open, and then they don't make it work, and he just like insults Andrew. He's just like, I expected better from someone on the wrestling team. Or like when Brian is like helping him out, he's just like, sir, actually, and he's just like, shut it, Pee-wee. It's like, he's such a piece of shit to all of these students, even though he has no reason to. He's just this mean, like, grouchy asshole to all of these students. And so it makes it a little easier to kind of sympathize with the kids then. But also, just like, it's just such a fascinating character, how, like, even though, you know, he's this principal, he should be this well-respected figurehead, he's also a genuinely huge asshole. So then you don't respect him at all.
I think it helps more so for like an adult's perspective to really help get
Mm-hmm.
into the kids over
Yes.
the generalized audience. Because again, like teenagers will immediately sympathize with at minimum one of these teenagers.
Yes.
Because all five of them are based off of like the most broadest cliques inside of a high school scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But for an adult, they look at that and they're like, these are terrible people. It's like, why should I care about them? And you then compare all of these kids to the principal, and you're like, okay, I sympathize more with the kids now. And then you
Yeah.
actually like get an understanding of why the kids are the way that they are.
Yeah.
You have a much greater appreciation for them as people, and
Exactly.
more sympathy towards their positions right now in comparison to Vernon, where it's like he simply just does what the awful things that he does because he is afraid of losing power.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that is not something that most rational people can sympathize with.
No, I have to bring up the scene when he's talking with Carl, the janitor. Like, that scene stuck with me. Like, it has been years since I had last seen this movie. I think well over a decade at this point. So I'm glad we were able to rewatch the scene. But that one scene where he's talking with Carl really stuck with me. Like, when I first watched it, how he's just like saying, like, when I'm old, these kids will take care of me. And Carl says, I wouldn't count on it. Like, it's just such a fascinating back and forth between the two. Like, how he's thinking of, like, and I feel like it's even more fascinating because this movie's over 40 years old, and, you know, these kids are essentially running the country now. Like, I think that's such a fascinating, it's like fascinating to look back on and like just think about. But it was also like a fascinating scene, I'm sure, back in 1985, like when it first came out. Like, there's just so much to think about with that interaction where he's just like, they're going to be taking care of me. And he's like, I wouldn't count on it. You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
I mean, it makes you like really ask the question of, well, obviously the response there is in reference to the fact that the kids hate you because you're a piece of shit to them.
Yeah.
But also another interpretation there could also be from the perspective of the kids will not care who you are.
Exactly.
You think that you're important right now because you have all the power over them.
Mm-hmm.
But once the power is about balanced out when they're of your age, why do they care who you are?
Mm-hmm.
You were the mean principal. They don't want to remember you.
Exactly.
They won't remember you outside of you being that terrible person.
Yeah, exactly. It's just something I love from this movie. It's just such a fascinating back and forth. Again, it's a moment in time that is captured, and I love how John Hughes captures it. He does it so well.
It's just the absolute master at capturing specific moments in time and really getting you to understand a child's perspective of something.
Yeah, that's why this is like seen as one of his best movies, because like he does a great job at capturing this. Like it just makes you scratch your head even more when you realize, oh, he wrote Baby's Day Out. Remember that? Like, just some of the other movies he's made, you're just like, what? But I feel like movies like that.
I'm hit or miss. Hit or miss with him. Sometimes it's like I'm not the biggest fan of the Home Alone movies. I appreciate certain elements of the writing there with how he sets up things and how he generally depicts kids in those films. Although I think because he's depicting like smaller, like less than teen kids for the most part, it's a little harder for me to get into that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, again, with like Weird Science, I think the main problem with the writing there is that he wrote the movie in 2 days.
Well, there's your problem.
Yeah. He came up with I think, if I remember correctly, he came up with the idea of Weird Science when he was like at a bar and started writing notes down on like a napkin. And then he took that home and he just wrote a screenplay of it in 2 days.
That's like a nostalgia critic joke.
I got a movie. It is.
Oh, that's funny. You know what? I think why this movie works so well is because it is just about these kids. Home Alone is not about a child struggle. It's about a child defending his house from a couple of robbers. And,
they struggle from a certain perspective, but it's not a personal struggle. It's a physical struggle.
Yeah, and it's a fantasy movie. Like the things that happen in that movie are fantastical. Like the injuries that Harry and Marv succumb to are not realistic in the slightest. Whereas this movie is very much a realistic portrayal. So I feel like he had a lot more opportunity to like really delve into these characters, where you can't really do that in Home Alone, which is fine. But at the same time, the struggles in this movie feel a lot more relatable than in, say, Home Alone. But
yeah,
I'm not really going
Home
to
Alone also has like the disadvantage of you're really only focusing on like 3 characters throughout the film, 2 of which do not need any kind of development at all because their entire purpose in life is to be one-dimensional villain characters.
Right.
Which is what the charm of those characters is all about. Which really only gives you room to work with one character that you can't even really make grow too much because of their age and their maturity.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. So
here we've got like teenage characters that are in the process of evolving as people, where you have the perfect opportunity to show them grow.
Yeah, exactly. What else did I want to talk about with Breakfast Club? Well, I just wanted to point this out. So in the lunch scene, Molly Ringwald's character, Claire, brings out sushi, which, first of all, who brings sushi for school lunch? That's weird, but whatever. But the other thing
actually, like in the modern day.
Well, in modern day, yes. I've definitely saw that.
In the modern day, that is an important thing to bring up. Sushi used to be like the quintessential rich person food. Because it used to be like mad expensive to make sushi, apparently.
Yeah.
Like in comparison to most anything else, it was really, really hard to come by not only like the ingredients, but also just like a way of preparing it.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, that's not the case. It's like on Wednesdays over at Publix, they offer $5 sushi.
Yeah.
And at my high school, there's a Publix literally like 5 minutes away So, like, one of the teachers will grab some sushi for students that are like within his class period, like the peer during that lunch hour, and
Yeah.
bring it back to them.
Yeah. Well, I was
So
going to
it's
say,
way
because
cheaper now.
yeah, I was gonna say because like all the other kids are just like sushi. What's that? And I'm like, I've been eating sushi since I was 3 years old. What do you mean? What is sushi? Like, but again, different time period. I get it. Like,
It was foreign, and like
yes,
back during that time, Americans mostly just had like the basic food groups, and
hmm
occasionally you'd get something that is like more closely associated with your ancestry, uh, whether it be like mostly European descent, since it was primarily focused around either of white or black Americans. Uh, Other ethnicities were not nearly as prevalent in like rural American towns. That kind of migration started moving in closer to like the 90s and the 2000s when
hmm
certain world events started happening. And that's more so when also like when Asian culture started getting big in America. I mean, like you think back to like some of the more classic anime films that would come out during that time period, like Akira or Perfect Blue, or just series in general, like
hmm
Dragon Ball
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
One Piece starting to come out. That stuff started becoming big like 15, 20 years after this movie came out.
Right. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
like all the food inside of that scene is supposed to be representative of the cliques. So,
hmm
you got the rich food, you've got the calorie buster,
Yeah. With
uh,
Andrew, you have Brian
you
with
got
the
Captain
classic
Crunch.
Captain Crunch.
Yeah, you got the Captain Crunch sandwich with the pixie stick, sugar going down. And then you got Bender, who doesn't have anything
Right.
because his family situation makes it so that he doesn't even want to engage himself with anything inside of the house.
Exactly. Yeah. It's I just love the little details like that of, the difference in these students, and not only just the fact that they're from different cliques, but from different home lives too. Like
Mm-hmm.
really just it's really cemented in that uh final conversation scene between all of them just sitting around, and we do start to figure out like why they are in detention. So if I remember correctly, so Bender, it's never really established what he did. He like pulled the fire alarm or something like that, and that's why he's in detention. But then you kind of get the idea that, I don't think it's explicitly said, but you kind of just get the idea that he's just in detention because, he's just a bad kid. So like he could have done anything really to get there. And as in that scene where he's like arguing with Vernon's just like, all right, I'm going to have you next Saturday and the Saturday after that. And it's just like, oh, so this is something that has happened before with him. But I'm trying to figure
Yeah,
out
and there's
like,
also like that that little mentioning that he had with, like, it's very clear that he has some kind of like relationship with the janitor,
mhm,
as if like they've seen each other at this time constantly, so they
yes,
kind of expect to see one another. But
exactly.
yeah, I believe he did trigger the fire alarm.
Okay.
That's specifically what got him thrown
Yeah.
into detention that day. Or I guess we should be calling it the Breakfast Club. I've seen a lot of people question why it's called the Breakfast Club. It's actually because that it was slang for Saturday morning detention
hmm
back in the days.
Okay. Yeah, that
John
makes
Hughes was
sense.
originally just going to title the movie Detention, but he changed the name to The Breakfast Club after overhearing, I think it was his nephew calling it The Breakfast Club at one point.
Okay. I think Detention would have been a little on the nose and a little too cheesy for this movie. I think The Breakfast Club works better. Like,
Yeah, Detention sort of just sounds like a work in progress
yes,
script name.
exactly. Okay, so that's why Bender's there. Andrew's there because, and I love Andrew's monologue when like he's explaining like what he did, how like, he embarrassed this kid by like taping his butt. That's what he did. He like put like wrestling tape like over this kid's butt, and then like they had to remove it, and like it totally hurt him. And like he's realizing like like shame and embarrassment he probably felt explaining that to his father. And like, I think that's a really cool scene where you get this perspective of this, like in any other media, this is a bully character. You would get it from the victim's perspective of being like, oh, I was bullied because I was being made fun of by this one-dimensional asshole. But like, you get this interaction from the perspective of the person who did it and the absolute regret he feels for pulling that sort of stunt, like you never see that in anything really. Like it was super refreshing to see. I was like, holy shit, what a great scene.
Yeah, it's like I keep on saying, this is like one of the very first movies that like actually depicted juvenile as being people.
Yeah.
Not just being the cliques that they're always assigned. Because like that is what this movie is all about. It's really about dissecting these cliques and really showing you the person that lies behind them. That yeah, they don't do great things all the time, but part of that is because society has sort of forced them into going along with these ideas.
Exactly. Yeah. And then Brian brought a gun to school because he wanted to kill himself, and you're just like, holy shit. Coming from the nerd, like this, he's like this meek little nerd character throughout the movie, and then he's just like admitting that he was going to kill himself with this gun, and you're just like, Jesus, like that's messed up.
I mean, like it's if anything, like one of the biggest problems a lot of people suffer in school is like just how much grades are like really emphasized by all corners, especially if you are a student that excels in classes. Seeing that number drop by even just 1 point it feels like a stab wound.
Yeah.
It is horrible that is just like the case of reality, but I speak from experience when I say that it hurts and it shouldn't hurt.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't, because it's just a number or a letter. It literally doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Like
once you move past school, which I mean, like the real world does not care about your school success.
No,
that number means literally nothing.
Yeah. I can tell you right now, James Schaeferlis does not care that I got a C in AP chemistry. So there's that.
He only cares that you do a decent job at video editing.
Which I do, as far as I'm concerned.
He hasn't said otherwise.
He hasn't said otherwise. He's probably too nice to say otherwise. But anyway, and then I love this little detail. Allie is just like, you want to know what I did to get in here? Nothing. I just had nothing else to do. Like that is so within her character to do, where she's just like, yeah, I just showed up and nobody said anything. Like, oh, it's just so funny. But
I mean, it's like she genuinely does not care. She's bored.
Yeah.
She wants to do something, but she doesn't really care enough to do anything. So she's like, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll do this.
Sure, why not?
I don't have any friends.
Yeah.
So like it's not like anyone will care. It's not like I'm going out somewhere with anyone. We don't actually know if she owns a Nintendo. Or if this even, I don't actually know if this even would take place in September that year, or she probably wouldn't have enough money for one.
Yeah, probably
she
not.
might have an Atari. There is a possibility that she has an Atari and she just doesn't care for the Atari. Her parents probably bought her E.T. for the Atari.
Go the best game on Atari.
That is my guess.
Yeah, exactly. So the reason I wanted to bring this up, I wanted to bring up all like what they did to get into detention, even though I don't think it truly matters. But I feel like we know what some of them did. Did we ever find out what Claire did to get into detention? I don't remember.
I know she was very hesitant of saying it. I don't actually know.
Yeah, because like I realized this time around, I'm like, wait a minute, did Claire ever say what she did to get into detention? Because like they make it a point, like they didn't really have to, but they do make it a point to say why every one of the other characters was in detention. I don't think it's ever said what Claire did. Now that I'm thinking about it,
apparently she skipped school to go shopping.
Okay, maybe that was
due to her
brought up.
parents' divorcement.
Right. Okay. So maybe that was brought up, in which case that is such a Claire thing to do. Like skip school, go shopping.
I mean, like, why does she care about academics when she could instead get the next Gucci sweater?
Right, exactly. Like it's I'm pretty sure that was brought up. I just didn't remember that. But like
It likely was.
Yeah, exactly. But I like these different reasons as to why they're there. The movie didn't need to have it, but I'm glad that it does. So then we get, because like every single one of those choices that they made kind of, it really delves deep into their characters. Like we get to understand why they do that stuff and why they are the way that they are. Like I just love these details.
And all of this
love this movie
information
for
is
that.
not just like given to you blankly inside of a very flat scene of exposition. It's given in a natural conversation.
Yeah.
Like these feel like teenage conversations. They use slang with one another. They talk over each other. They get very emotional when they feel like they're being personally attacked. Like it is so interesting how easy it is for you to just sit down and listen to these people talk.
Yeah.
It's like a therapy session that gives you some kind of personal enjoyment.
Yeah, that's something I really noticed with this movie, is that a lot of it is just talking. Is just these characters sitting around talking. Like on paper, that sounds boring. That sounds awful. Like that does not sound like it would make for an interesting movie, but this is a very interesting movie because of what they're talking about and how they're talking about it. Like it's a very clever movie, even though it is a lot of talking, but I'm okay with that because just a lot of love and passion goes into making this movie work. And thank you, John Hughes. Like he did a very good job at fleshing out these characters for sure.
It's very impressive. I am so incredibly thankful to have a movie like this that can really just connect to a generation of, or just a group of people that really are not properly represented in film. Because these kids are either way too annoying to the point where I'm trying to just ignore everything that they're saying for the sake of my ears, or they're just talking like adults. And this is that perfect middle ground where they feel like kids still, but they also have some kind of dignity and understanding of what they're feeling and what they're saying.
Absolutely.
They just don't entirely know how to process it.
Yeah. Like you said, it's a shame that this movie came out as early as it did. And like a lot of the high school media that we grew up with was post Breakfast Club. And yet it does things the opposite of the Breakfast Club. Like you'd think it would want to take inspiration from the Breakfast Club. But from what I've seen, a lot of movies that glorify high school or take place in a high school just don't. Like they go the easy Disney Channel route where they just glorify it and make it this like happy, cool time. Or like when they want to be serious, they do so in such forceful and over dramatic ways that don't feel relatable in the slightest. So
the serious it ever gets from like an academic standpoint is like, oh no, this character is not making the grades they want, or oh no, this character is socially awkward. They're just like me, except annoying.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a minute. No. They're just like me. It's like, that is not what I'm looking for. That's not at all what I'm looking for.
No.
Yet they're sometimes funny and they're sometimes really fun and charming, but it's not reflective of like the real experience.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to go to something like High School Musical for relatability, but at the same time, like we could use a little more movies like Breakfast Club. So then I know that, studios and filmmakers took inspiration from the best version of this at some point. If you're gonna do a serious high school movie, like I remember there was that movie Booksmart a couple years ago, which a lot of people really liked. I thought it was fine, but I never really gravitated towards it because I also felt like it kind of fell into the same trap where it is sort of glorifying high school in a way that I don't entirely relate to, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it is very rare to find really like most any story that does this really well. I mean, there's some really good books that cover this topic, but I'm illiterate. I can read some.
Oh, aren't we all? Well,
I can read Dracula, and
yeah.
that is it.
We all can relate to Dracula. Oh, well, is there anything else you want to say about The Breakfast Club before talking about this VHS tape a little more?
I think a lot of people, I haven't really heard many people talk about it, but I really like the score of The Breakfast Club a whole lot.
Yeah.
I really like the songs that they made for the movie. They're really, really good.
Yeah, obviously, Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds is like the big one, the big breakout one that everybody remembers.
Yeah, it's the big one. That title gets referenced and stuff like Teen Titans Go all the time. Because Teen Titans Go did a Breakfast Club episode. Apparently, I think it was Victorious. They also did an episode that was literally just the Breakfast Club. Nothing unique there. But also it's like We Are Not Alone and Fire in the Twilight. Those songs are also very, very sublime.
Yeah. I liked when there was music, but I'm glad that the movie kind of restrained itself and had a lot of silent scenes where like there was no music, because I feel like it kind of added to the realism of the movie. Like you were able to like take it more seriously.
In the moments that needed to have suspense, it added to the drama of scenes that really required it. The music was more so focused for the beginning, ending, and also for moments of happiness. It could be seen as like a way of like really highlighting when the characters are actually having a good bit of fun themselves as a group. Because like I remember of at least one of these songs, I can't quite remember which one, played when they were all smoking weed. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember the song either. I don't know the song titles other than Don't You Forget About Me, but
I don't know all of them off the top of my head. I know the songs off of the top of my head because they're all bangers.
Yeah, they are very good. From what I remember.
I really like the music. I can't really think of anything else to mention on this film.
It's just very good.
It's a really good movie that withstands the test of time.
Yeah.
It was written in a week, which I think was a little surprising.
Because it's so good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's... Well, no. I know why. The movie has a lot of improv in it, actually. There's a number of conversation scenes where John Hughes gave them an outline of what to say, but he also directed them to kind of do their own thing or put their own spin on it, change things around a little bit.
Right.
Which helped with the chemistry a lot. I know a lot of people were talking about this with the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, because they also had a lot of improv in that film. And in both cases, I think it really helps sell a connection between all these characters.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. Like, I was a fan of some of the improv in the new Ninja Turtles movie, just not all of it. But I feel like that's just more so, that's an entirely different conversation with that movie. But like, yeah, no, I feel like the improv in this movie was a lot better. I felt like, definitely.
Yeah. I think at least with Ninja Turtles, the part of the improv that I would highlight is more so the connection you can really feel between all the cast members, which is where I'd highlight it here.
Yeah.
The comment on like the pop culture references they do, that's a completely different thing. It's like this movie doesn't have, it has a couple of pop culture references, but they are not center stage at all. It's not like them saying, look, you remember Knight Rider? I like Knight Rider. We're going to break out of this school inside of a car, and we're going to act like the car is talking like Kit. I'm like,
remember Ghostbusters?
I love Ghostbusters.
Me too. Yeah, no, this is a very restrict, and I feel like that kind of adds to the timelessness. Like, even so, I feel like that kind of adds to the timelessness because I don't really think of the pop culture references in Breakfast Club. Like, I think of the great character work that was done with Breakfast Club. So
you think of the culture that the film itself created,
exactly,
rather than the culture that the film uses.
Yeah, because this movie in and of itself can be considered a pop culture reference because as you were saying earlier with like Teen Titans Go, like, yeah, they made references to the Breakfast Club. So I think
it's a quintessential 80s film.
It
is.
is.
Like you ask
it
somebody, name 10 big 80s movies from your youth, and Breakfast Club is sure to pop up in like at least a handful of the people that you talk to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, when I think of 80s movies, Breakfast Club is definitely up there for me. Like, when I think of like quintessential 80s cinema, like, yeah, this would definitely be up there. Absolutely. But even though it is very much an 80s movie, as we've said time and time again, like, it is also very timeless because of
it highlights
yes,
common trends
yes,
that unfortunately continue to persist, and it's very sad. But
yeah,
all I can really say is, oh, so school sucks. Grow a damn pair of balls.
Oh, SMH John Hughes, why don't you take a couple of notes from Doug Walker? Truly the most timeless, the true artist of every generation.
He made Kick-Assia.
That's true.
He made Kick-Assia.
You can't go beyond Kick-Assia. Like, Kick-Assia is as peak as it gets, unfortunately. Oh, I love Kick-Assia. So good.
John Hughes wishes he could make something as good as Kick-Assia.
True. Well, anyway, I guess to wrap up our discussion on Breakfast Club, do you happen to own this physically?
I do, actually. I own this as part of a Blu-ray collection called the John Hughes Yearbook Collection that also includes Weird Science and 16 Candles.
Interesting. It doesn't have Pretty in Pink or Ferris Bueller?
Oh, no. So all three of those movies are owned by Universal.
Okay.
I own a separate John Hughes collection that includes Ferris Bueller, Pretty in Pink, Some Kind of Wonderful, She's Having a Baby, and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Okay, difference in
there's
studio.
Two collections.
Yeah.
That one is done by Lionsgate, I think.
Lionsgate?
Or Paramount. No, it's Paramount.
Oh,
that one is Paramount.
Okay.
And this one is Universal. That's right.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense then. Well, that's cool. Yeah, no, I own it on VHS, but my God, the quality was not very good. I looked it up. Apparently, there's a Criterion release of Breakfast Club, which
I did not know that until somebody inside the server mentioned it, and I was like, "Really?" And I looked it up, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I love this movie. I should own it on Criterion."
Honestly, me too. So I think I'm gonna get rid of this VHS tape. Like, there are certain movies I'll keep on VHS because I love the aesthetic of the VHS aesthetic on some of these movies, but I feel like Breakfast Club is one I don't really need on the VHS aesthetic. Like, I need it on like a nice Blu-ray quality. And honestly, I love Criterion. I love their work. I'd love to have the Breakfast Club on a Criterion, but
I'm sure that there's like really interesting essays. And extra features that they have.
Oh, do you think they have the Molly Ringwald essay?
I hope.
Oh, that would be so cool.
I think she posted that one through the Washington Post, but I'm sure they could have found a way to print it out and put it in a booklet. That I hope.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I wonder though if it's just like the 35th anniversary print, because that's the version of the Blu-ray version I have. That just includes like the extra booklet and stuff, or maybe it includes extra things. I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to research it.
Yeah,
find out.
Suffice it to say, even though I am getting rid of the VHS, I think this movie still has a place in the collection, no matter what. So that's that. Yeah, great. I feel like we should end this discussion with let's just mention that this movie has the greatest ending shot of all time, with Bender just like fist bumping into the air and like it freeze framing on him as he's walking through the football
field.
Very
happy with all the connections he's made and having his freedom for the rest of the afternoon.
It's a very iconic shot, for sure.
Very much.
Yeah.
Teen Titans Go paid homage to it.
Oh, that's how you know it's peak.
For all the people at home, the episode in question, I believe, is called "Hey You, Don't Forget About Me in Your Future." Go and watch it. It's on HBO Max.
Yeah.
So you're still on there and want to support Mr. Zablab.
Yeah, as we all know, I have a huge following of Teen Titans Go followers.
They all love it.
They all do, yeah. Every single one of the people who listen to this podcast, they love Teen Titans Go. Go raving mad about it. Let's be honest. Well, Ketchup. Shout out your stuff, dude. Where can people find you?
So as of right now, I am pretty active on Letterboxd. I watch the movies. I sometimes have refrigerators. There's also Serialized, where I'm watching television shows on occasion. I'm really bad at watching stuff. Right now I'm going through Stranger Things. So if you want to see what I think of season 3, I remember it being bad. So let's see if it is still bad. You can catch me there. Sometime in the near future, I'm looking at doing YouTube. I've got some good ideas. I need to talk about how amazing family is in the Fast and the Furious franchise. It will happen. But yeah, that is where you can find me.
Nice. Yeah, all your links will be in the description below. And also, when you finish Stranger Things, listen to all the Stranger Things episodes I did, because I succumbed to the wrath of Sonic Tiger and eventually made Stranger Things a part of this podcast. So I had things to say.
Horror Nights, so this year, so that's the main reason I'm rewatching Stranger Things.
Oh, nice.
I've never seen season 4 before. The house is specifically based on season 4, so I kind of feel obligated to get the context.
Yeah.
Once I do so, though, I'm going to be listening to all of your stuff.
Nice.
Probably in the car, since I'll have like 8 hours to spare.
There you go. Hey, according to Chaos, apparently the podcast is very good at listening for long car trips. So that's good. But yeah. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Ketchup, for coming on today's episode. I'm glad we talked about both these movies. They were definitely due for a rewatch, both of them. So
thank you very much for having me on and finally allowing us to see what your divine beliefs on The Breakfast Club are. I have been waiting for this moment since January.
Ah, great. Yeah. And as we all know, I'm objectively correct in thinking my thoughts on The Breakfast Club. So
you have never had a wrong opinion.
That is true. That is true.
Except for when you gave 16 Candles a 6 out of 10. That was probably a wrong opinion.
Probably.
But
wait, did I give it a 6 out of 10?
You did originally give it a 6 out of 10.
It's been years since I've seen 16 Candles. I don't remember anything about it. I'm shocked I gave it a 6.
I think you were being... I think this is another Bebe's Kids situation where you were just being really nice.
That is true. Bebe's Kids. Oh, classic Bebe's Kids. But anyway, yeah, thanks for coming on. And thank you, the listener, for listening to today's episode. If you want to support the show, give a like, give a comment, Listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or on YouTube. That's fine too. Doesn't matter. Also, keep an eye out for shorts. Also, keep an eye out for streams. Also, just want to remind people, October's coming up. And boy, howdy, do I got some plans for October episodes. So keep an eye out for those. I'm very excited for one particular episode. I won't reveal anything. No spoilers. I want people to be surprised. But in any case, thank you for listening, and always remember, don't you forget about me, something, luck of the Fryish episode ending. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye. Just